Welcome back, everybody. Episode 36 of the Emerge podcast. Where am I going to go for here? Right, what I'm going to do is housekeeping first. Aye, pure absolute shited in this, Gav, man. Right, so housekeeping, thanks to everybody for listening. Thanks to everybody who likes, shares, comments, does all that pure lovely, jubbly stuff. I'm looking down here because I've had to write it all down because I'm terrible at introducing all this. So what I was going to mention is more people are listening in England than Scotland, which is absolutely disgraceful. So if you're from Scotland, aye, share it. If you're from Scotland,
I know.
And you're right. You need because I've got another wee stat as well. The people who are listening who haven't subscribed is astronomically it's disgusting.
80%.
Aye. 76.2% who listen aren't subscribed. So can we change all that, please? Aye, just press a button, man. I'm not asking you to go and walk 500 miles and then 500 more. Just press subscribe. But look at Gav's jumper. Gav's when I love a jumper. We should have sent one out to our beautiful, handsome guest, Sebastian, but never. So
not yet.
And saying that, we've not got a store to sell the jumpers, so it's kind of half your fault. So it's not your fault, listeners.
Accounts, get them on it.
I know. Actually, that's me just realising that. So we'll probably get something sorted in the background about that. Sponsors.
Yes.
Sphere, McDonald, Hodge, Media. I've got it.
Smashed it, Kenny. Smashed it.
Brilliant.
For all your photo restoration needs, be them 100-year-olds, be them 200-year-old. Our man Steve got it covered. Easy hint, Gav. Hint, how good is it?
Tremendous.
We need to actually get pictures. We should share pictures of that because the one that you've done with some of your family that are amazing.
Oh, so good.
All your media needs, be it photos, be it videos, be it I don't know what else, Gav. What else? anything visual, Steve, or audio. Steve's quite good with audio. But anyway, so that's all that stuff taken care of. Sebastian Walls is our handsome. Look how handsome he is. If you're listening to this through audio, you hear his silky smooth voice as well. So, Sebastian, you run the Art of Charisma website and your Art of Charisma on absolutely everything.
Yep,
on all the socials.
So Art of Charisma on Twitter, Art of Charisma on Instagram, Art of Charisma official on Facebook. We're pretty much everywhere, and people are getting kind of sick of it. But don't worry,
it should be. That's what you want, innit? You want people to be flung in people's faces. That's what we need to get into. We need to start doing that sort of thing.
100%.
Putting it in people's faces.
See, just before we dive into what you actually do, see when you said about your socials there, what's your favourite platform? Just for in general.
Great question, that. So I've been experimenting a little bit with TikTok, just been trying to get it out there. But unfortunately, I'm almost like the Godfather, how it keeps pulling me back in. And that platform is Instagram. I don't know what it is about it, but I can just spend hours and hours looking at things. And sometimes it pops images up in front of me that I have no idea that I liked. I'm like, oh my God, I want to see a pug riding a unicycle. God, I didn't know I even needed that in my life. But, here we go.
You do, man. You do.
Instagram is probably my favourite at the moment.
Yeah, I think we spoke about it before, Kenny, on the podcast, but Twitter, I never really get involved in Twitter too much until we really started the podcast, and see because it's so unfiltered, like you can literally put anything on it or see anything on it. News is the first to hit Twitter before anything, and it's just that's slowly becoming my favourite sort of go-to, like first thing in the morning. Oh, check Twitter. See what's happening in the world.
Yeah, no. Funny you should say that, because I was actually speaking to someone about Twitter recently, and anything that's live, so like live tweeting of football matches or of political debates or whatever it is, that's really its thing. That's where you go for it, isn't it?
Of course.
And that was before we done a podcast on Thursday night, Gava. I went, Rangers won 2-0, and he went on Twitter. He went, oh wow, did you see the goal? I'm like, no, I've not seen it. There it's there, on Twitter. And the game had finished like 3 minutes.
I know.
And they'd already found me the goal.
It's incredible.
But I think it's interesting how different niches thrive on different platforms, and some things that work with some. It can be a little bit of a minefield. But Twitter is definitely good. You speak to my dad; he's mad on nutrition and fitness at the moment. He's always he's always saying, Sebastian, man, I'm on this Twitter. And I'm like, Dad, I've not been Twitter since 2008, mate. You got to come to the party a little bit.
But I find that depending on what you're trying to obviously get out there or what you're trying to find, that's where your social media is. Like my mum, pure Facebook. She shares Doug's at a roast in Arizona somewhere. Like, so
that's
that's
so
her kind of thing. If you want to share dogs missing around the world, go to Facebook. Don't go to Twitter, because you'll end up with the girl for TikTok who reads the mad tweets for Glasgow. That's what you'll end up being spoken about. But
You will.
TikTok's so good. Because I think everything's on TikTok, apart from obviously live feeds, like you say. Live feed is Twitter, probably the best place to be. If you're pretty, go to Instagram. Snapchat's just for a laugh, innit?
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, it's quite interesting because Lewis Capaldi, who's a bit of a local hero, he's kind of really made his name on TikTok, and he was kind of for a while there coveted as the Prince of TikTok.
The king of TikTok. Aye.
Yeah, so it's quite interesting how he's taken it on as well, and how some celebrities are using it and businesses. It's really interesting, but yeah, I still think it's a long way to go though.
I think Instagram as well. Like, I think a lot of people's go-to for Instagram is because people, especially in this sort of society, this day and age, see when you've got a visual, see when you don't need to read something, and you just see a picture and it explains what you're actually seeing, rather than a story on Facebook or on Twitter.
I think that's where you're doing quite well just now, because you're taking your videos for TikTok and posting them on Instagram, because it just saves people reading a blurb. It's just an effort, isn't it? Who can be bothered reading blurbs anymore, man? I mean, go and read a book. If you want to read something, read a book. But anyway,
that was a great wee segue. We're only about a minute into it.
I know. But for those of you listening, you should see like our beautiful jumpers. But it's just annoying how Sebastian's turned up like in a 3-piece suit. Like,
no, listen.
I'm kidding. No, he's got a beautiful white tee and a lovely bomber jacket. Don't let him, be modest about it. It's lovely.
Listen, I'll sort you out, boys. Don't worry, man. Don't worry. We'll get them on.
That's fine.
Zara, we'll get them on.
Is that what it is? All right. I thought it was a really proper. Like, it looks real good, man. Looks real good.
See if you were saying that to me in a bus stop, I'd probably be a bit intimidated. I'd be like, I'm going to get robbed.
No. Just
go, Frederick.
But anyway, right. So Sebastian's here to talk about the art of charisma. He's going to tell us everything there is to about. So actually, he's going to tell us about the art of charisma on the website. But firstly, so what about you growing up? Where did you grow up? High school? How was that? Just general chat about you growing up. That's interesting. And if it's interesting, just skip it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, it's really interesting that you started there, because that's where the whole sort of charisma thing really began. So I'm originally from Alloa, and I joke that it's a little bit of a ghetto because nobody knows where it is, but there's still there's a bit of charm, but there's a little bit rough there. And I think that with a lot of schools in Scotland, you've got to be able to kind of almost handle yourself in the playground. I think growing up in Scotland, that you've got to be able to give the banter, you've got to be able to take the banter. And what I mean is that, so when I went to school in St. Modens, which is just outside Alloa, I used to look at kids who were always getting in trouble. There was kids who were like the naughty kids of the class. And I'm going to put my hands up, Kenny. I was probably a little bit of a goody two-shoes. My homework was always in on time.
Nice.
I could always handle myself in the playground. When kids were making fun of me on the football pitch or something, I could always have something quick to say back at them. But there was kids who always got into trouble, and I could never understand how they could always talk their way out of situations. So you'll probably see this, you'll look back and go, you know what? I would say something in class and then I'd get detention or I'd get pulled up by a teacher. But then if so-and-so said something, nothing would happen. And this used to always sort of play on my mind. Like, why is it that some kids could just somehow get away with murder and there was other kids that always got pulled under? And that's where the sort of idea about, well, there's obviously something around about people liking certain people having influence over others sort of began. And it was really as early as that where I would see things. And then I grew up, I went through numerous of different jobs. I didn't go to university. I started working in the BBC. I wanted to become a presenter on television. And then Jimmy Savile happened, and then I thought, no, I can't be doing it.
No, jump ship, man, definitely.
My friends wouldn't let me have it. I couldn't be aggro, to be honest with you.
How did you end up in the BBC?
So I got an apprenticeship. So in that transition period of going from high school to the BBC, there was basically a call out of, we're looking for people who were wanting to work in television, but wanting to get a qualification at the end and wanting to, earn a little bit of money at the same time. One of the things I did quite well growing up is that I always had the confidence to go against the grain. So when people were, listening to, house music, I was listening to hip hop. When people were doing drama class, I was doing comedy. When people were going to university, I was getting an apprenticeship. And so that's something I would always recommend to someone, is that just have the confidence to sometimes go against the grain when things are happening. So that was literally just through a application process, and I got a year at the BBC of going around all the departments, from everything from, religious radio to news to comedy to children's, a little bit of everything. And that kind of really, I kind of really learned to hone my sort of skill of talking to people, how people tick, understanding what works on camera and things like that. So that's,
I think it's quite interesting you say go against the grain, right? Because I'm quite a firm believer in, especially in Scotland, or especially in Glasgow maybe, you're almost scared to do something different because you think people are just going to take the piss and they won't take you seriously. And I've seen quite a lot of like actors and stuff, and one of the people we had on recently, Darren Connell, who's a comedian and an actor, and he was talking about how he's missed a lot of opportunities because he's a Glaswegian actor, he's a Scottish actor, and people almost kind of look down at it and do this and that. But I think what you're saying, going against the grain, like even something like this for us, before we started this, it's your thought of going onto a platform and speaking to a camera, to me was terrifying. But then once you get your head around it and you actually do it, it's fine. You know what I mean? It makes you a lot more confident and whatever. So 100%.
Yeah, and look at you now, like you guys have got a great platform. You're talking completely effortlessly, dare I say charismatic as well.
Nice.
Smooth talker.
The thing is that it doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen going from the confidence to say, stuff you guys, I'm off to do this. It doesn't happen overnight. So I would recommend anyone do small changes. So when someone asks you, where do you want to go? You're going out to pub. Where do you fancy going out tonight? Don't answer, I don't mind, I don't know. Say something with conviction and have an opinion about something.
Yeah.
And that's just a small way to start practicing, just going against the grain. So when someone says, I fancy going here, and then you say, well, I fancy trying this new place, 9 times out of 10, they'll go, yeah, fine, go on then. And just build that up and make bigger and bigger decisions about going against the grain. And eventually you'll find yourself confidently doing things. Yeah. You don't necessarily need to jump in with both feet right at the beginning.
100%.
What age did you leave school at, Sebastian? Did you stay all the way till 6th year, or did you leave quite early?
I left at 17, purely because for me personally, school was just such a challenge. I didn't really... since I went to school in Stirling, which is just outside Alloa, but I was originally from the town, I constantly felt like a bit of an outsider. So I always had to kind of use these skills of trying to be the funny guy in the classroom, or be the loudest, or the class clown, and do all those sort of things, just to really get noticed and to be accepted in some of the popular kids groups. Yeah. I always kind of described ourselves as a little bit of like the in-betweeners. We didn't really quite fit the moshers. We didn't quite fit with the good kids that were good at football. Yeah. But we were always ones that had the best house parties, and we always had the most laughs. So we had that to us. So that was kind of like a little bit of my story. Wow, and so I did the BBC for a couple of years, about 2 years. In that time, I moved down to Manchester and spent a couple of years working in children's comedy, children's entertainment, which was lots of fun. And eventually at that point, I thought, I've got got enough chat here. Perhaps I can make a little bit of money at this. So then I transitioned into working in sales, and I worked I knew I wasn't going to work in sort of cold calling, in a call center.
Yeah.
And that wasn't really up for me. So I decided to work in the motor trade, selling cars. And I thought, well, if I'm going to sell cars, I want to sell the best in the world. So I went to Mercedes-Benz and to sell cars with them. But the story of me getting that job was so interesting because I had no experience in sales, no experience in anything. And I just walked into the dealership with my full suit on, and I walked up to the receptionist and I said, I'm here for an interview and with the sales manager. And she said, the sales manager's got nothing in his diary for an interview today, pal. You must be joking. And I said, listen, I've just got off the phone with them. You're going to have to speak to him and say that I'm here. And she goes, oh, sorry. Gets on the phone and goes, hi, Dave. Yeah, I've got Sebastian here for an interview. No, I know you've got nothing in the diary, but he's here. He's adamant that you spoke to him. And then she puts the phone down. She goes, he'll be with you in a minute. I sat down, and then this geezer, I swear to God, this guy was like Dwayne Rock Johnson. This guy was units. And I thought, God, what have I done here? I completely blagged my way into this. I can't believe this is happening. And he walks up to me and goes, listen, pal, I've got nothing talking about an interview. What are you doing here? And I said, look, I'm so sorry. I was actually, as soon as she said your name on the phone, I realised I'm in actually the wrong place, but I do have an interview. But listen, just while I've got you here, do you mind if I have a couple of 20, 30 minutes of your time just to talk to you about what I'm... And then from that, we had a discussion, had a chat, and he goes, listen, it takes balls to do something like that. You're going to come back for an interview. I got an interview, and unfortunately enough, I got into the job, and I was there for several years, selling, top end cars. And in the end, I sold over £1 million worth of vehicles in this time that I was there. So huge numbers. And from there, I did lots of odd jobs in sales, working in advertising, things like that. And then I bounced back to Edinburgh. I kind of had a sort of quarter-life crisis where I was like,
quarter life.
I need to get out. I was working in
You're ambitious with how many years you're going to live, aren't you?
I'm going to live hard by young types. Do you know what I mean? Just go for it. And then from there, I came back to Scotland, and I was reevaluating myself, and I managed to get a job in Edinburgh. But while I was in Edinburgh, I started running social events for millennials. So it was all about people who didn't know anyone, who maybe perhaps went to university in Edinburgh, but their friends had moved on, or, guys that had worked in finance down in London and relocated to Edinburgh, didn't know anyone, and they were looking for a party. And if they're looking for a party, I was holding it. So I had this sort of networking social event for millennials. And within the first sort of month, we had 200 members. Within the last 6 months, we had 600 members. And at the peak of it, we were like having like 100 people show up to these events where people would just people didn't know anyone, and they would just socialize with themselves. So you can imagine, Gav, if you didn't know anyone and you were saying, all right, you need to be in Revolution at 8:00, and there's going to be 100 other people there for you to speak to, sometimes people would go, whoa, what the heck is this all about? But actually, there was something quite warm about not knowing anyone. You didn't know. You didn't need to see these people ever again. You can kind of be yourself, let your guard down, talk to people about anything and everything. And so that's one of the reasons why they worked quite well. The idea for them came from the fact that I wanted to go to a gig in Edinburgh. I wanted to go to a hip-hop gig, but nobody wanted to come with me. And so I ended up not going because I didn't want to go to a gig myself. So that's where the idea came from. I thought, I need to start building a social life here. I need to start getting out there, speaking to people. And it's a bit cheesy when you say to people, I want to start making friends. But in high school, that it was easy. You had karate class, you had PE, you had subjects that you're interested in. But when you get older, after university, how do you actually make friends? How do you meet people?
How does that go about? What do you do? You just get in touch with loads of pubs, go to unis, get people's emails, email them saying there's a party or a social event, and then get them to turn up?
Yeah, it was quite interesting because when I was in Edinburgh, I got really au fait with the app Meetup.
Au fait? You say au fait?
Au fait. I got really familiar.
Very
with
fancy.
How do you very familiar with that Meetup. And so what I do was, when I was looking at what was going on in Scotland at the time, there was lots of over 50s hill walking and lots of book clubs and lots of things like that, which there's nothing wrong with those sort of hobbies and interests. However, for young people, what is there that is sexy, that's attractive, that's you get people, juiced up, where there's going to be good-looking guys, good-looking girls, a bit of chat, a bit of banter, and that they're going to have a really good night. There wasn't really anything. There was many things happening within the student circle. So if you had a group of friends, there was plenty of stuff to go to. However, if you know no one, then there wasn't that much. You might go to a pub, you might join a five-a-side club, but outside that, there's not really much there.
Much going on.
Yeah, so that's what I built up. And then Facebook groups was a great way to do that. And then from there, we started doing things like Bring a Friend, and then we started partnering up with other groups because we became a little bit infamous. We were known as the naughty kids in the playground. And so people wanted to know, what are these guys doing over here? What are they doing different? And so we said, listen, come join us. Bring your group over here and we can make it bigger and make it better.
100%. So, see, when we're talking about charisma, right? This is probably the big question: is what is charisma? So, for me, the way you're talking and stuff like that just comes across as confident, and you know what you're saying, and know that you've researched it, but you know where you're going with the conversation, and each way you can go, you can link conversations, you can talk effortlessly. So, what would you say is the definition of charisma?
Great question.
Is that what you would say, Gav? Is that what you would say the definition of charisma is?
I don't know is the honest answer, but from what I took about when Kenny was obviously was speaking about you coming on is, what do we think it is? What is charisma? And then I was kind of saying, I think it's confident. I don't really know, but in my opinion, it's like having the confidence to be something different or be yourself and not have to worry about it. And like the way you strike conversations, the way the conversations can flow, and how to link everything together. And just if you don't know something, like for example, like I don't know, like. But find a way to say it without saying I don't know. You would maybe link it in with something else or whatever.
Maybe I don't know. Maybe I've not googled this, by the way. I'm just sitting.
No. By all means.
I was thinking like it sounds. My definition probably the same as yours, but then when you're saying about the whole confidence and know, if you rather than saying you don't know, I would be I would say I don't know what that is. What is that? Can you tell me? Like rather than trying to bullshit it, you just be honest and go, I don't know, can you tell me what that is? So then you kind of
it does depend on the circumstance.
Is charisma and charismatic the same thing also? Is it the same thing? It is.
Yeah, so it's so interesting the fact that charisma has for years had this sort of enigma around it, the fact that nobody can quite describe what it is, but 100%, if I put two people in front of you, you'd be able to identify a person that has charisma and a person that doesn't. For example, when we see people on television and celebrities, we can see people who are famously charismatic, the likes of, the Will Smiths, and things like that. And then if you look at perhaps some footballers, like maybe like an Arsene Wenger or something like that, you can tell that he lacks in charisma. So even though we can't describe it, it's really fascinating the fact that we can tell that somebody has charisma and somebody doesn't. Through when I was starting this all up, it's really interesting because the Greeks described charisma as a divine gift, something that was just almost like this supernatural sort of. Charisma is a skill. That's ultimately what it is. It's a skill. It's under the same umbrella as being able to influence and persuade someone into your way of thinking. Now, charisma has 100% had a little bit of a bad rap through, notorious people throughout history who have been evil, but have also been charismatic. But charisma, like power, money, it can be used for good, it can be used for bad. Because equally, we have, infamously nice people who are charismatic, the likes of, Martin Luther King, Gandhi, all these sort of people that have made such great impact in the world. For me, the real science of it is an individual who is able to release another individual's dopamine through just speaking, through just being there. And dopamine is a chemical in everyone's brain that is released. It's released when you eat chocolate. It's released when you're having a good time. You're doing things that you enjoy. If someone's able to tap into that and release it for someone else without them knowing, that's ultimately the crux of charisma. And that's why it's such a skill. It's not really this innate, abnormal, superstitious thing.
It's funny when you're saying, like, you gave some examples there about...
I would have had a drink after saying all that. That was pretty cool.
But, it's funny what you're saying there about the individuals that you'd mentioned, because when you think about presenters or comedians, and I'm not saying every comedian has to be charismatic, because you get some kind of introverted comedians that are just naturally quite funny, but see people like Keith Lemon, or we had like Des Clark, these guys you can go into a room and start speaking, and just even though you don't know what you're going to say, you just all of a sudden just come out with these words, and it just all links together. And it's interesting because it's probably pretty much impossible to be like a presenter or a certain type of show and not be charismatic.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, it's interesting that.
On you go. No. Come on, go there. Go.
What I was going to just time in there is that yes, it is interesting there about you said they're introverted, but just to be charismatic, you do not necessarily need to be the loudest, gracious, biggest personality in the room. Introvert has their own unique style of charisma, and extrovert has their unique style of charisma. And there is actually a personality in the middle, and being able to identify which one and which people are which. It ties into charisma. But you're 100% right. There's people that just walk into a room and you go, I want to know them. And there's people that walk into a room and go, meh. I've shaken hands with people. I said, lovely to meet you. And they go, we've met before. And I've gone, yeah. And sometimes it's thinking, did I forget them? Did they do this? I'm a bit embarrassed. But sometimes it's like some people just do not make an impression when they walk in.
I was, when you were talking, Gav, about like Keith Lemon, like, I would say like Sir Alex Ferguson's quite a charismatic person. Like, I read David Beckham's book, and there's times where he would walk into a room, wouldn't say anything, just sit down. He would read the match day programme, but everybody knew he was there.
He's got an aura.
There's this energy about him that, or you know him that well that you just him being in the room just changes the tone. There was a game they were losing. I think the Champions League they were losing 2-1. He came in at half time, sat down, had a wee bit of orange, wee bit of water, and said to everybody, "Do you know what you have done wrong? Like, all I want you to do is just go out, just enjoy it. Try and press the play, try and put the game forward, put it on them." And they went out and they won 3-2, and that was all he said at half time. Like, just that person having that energy and just having that much influence in a person seems to be quite charismatic for being like, because he could be both extrovert and introvert. Like, you hit David Beckham in the forehead with a boot. Like, it can be quite out there. So you could be both.
It's funny you say that, because see, when you think about if you relate it to a job, just any job, so you'll probably say this as well, Sebastian, like, you'll work for certain bosses more than you work for others. And I think that charisma's probably got a lot to do with that, because, and not just to say charisma, like you said, isn't just being out there and being this and that, it's a lot more, but there's definitely been bosses that I might go an extra mile for, and bosses that I'm like, nah.
100%. 100%. And it's so interesting you made the comparison of Keith Lemon, who is, I would say, the most out there, wild geezer going, and in Sir Alex Ferguson, who I would say definitely 100% Kenny to agree with, it has that aura, has that leadership, but it still it would still come under the umbrella of charisma. So it's really interesting, but they would both probably be on both separate ends of the spectrum. And I 100% agree with you, Gavin. The fact is that there's sometimes I look at, in my career, I've looked at people and I'm going, how the heck have you gotten into that job there? Because you don't know what you're talking about. You're not very experienced and blah, blah. Because at some point, somewhere down the line, somebody liked them.
Yeah.
And some of the stuff that we've been trying is that, in fact, is if you look at footballers, athletes, and you put it back to, the girl in Starbucks that's working for £5 an hour. Is she really going to go above and beyond the Call of Duty, really give that 100% experience for £5 an hour? She's probably not, if I'm going to be honest, because none of us would. Yeah. However, if she likes her boss, if she likes where she's working, if she gets on with her colleagues, that completely changes the game. And that's why when we put it back to Sir Alex Ferguson, the likes of Rio Ferdinand and Roy Keane all played for each other, is because there was this kind of huge aura of charisma, to be honest.
That's how Man U have been pure pants since you left.
I know. Tonight, and I gulled off. I was like, come on, Ollie. Come on.
So, do you like football? Sebastian?
Yeah, well, it's interesting there, because one of the things that I really kind of sparked this was that I was actually studying athletes, just athletes in general, because what I was fascinated by was that the UK's fascination with people who are like Premier League footballers, Olympians, why we have them as role models and things like that. But more importantly, why is it that when a footballer, for example, takes part in a scandal, he's been cheating on his missus or he's been caught partying, that it all kind of blows over a little bit. We'll kind of seem to forgive them. And why is it that they forgive them? And I was studying here, and actually one of the things that I was researching was regarding of like cycling teams in the Tour de France. And that the fact is, since there's these athletes, they bring a certain amount of commercial opportunity. So advertisers pay to be associated, be next to it, or have their logo on them. And with a cycling team, that's a huge, huge, benefit to them. Mm-hmm. Now, the interesting thing is that what the research found is that when a cycling team was part of a doping scandal, the credibility of the brand that was associated with them was not affected one bit. And a doping scandal for me is like the peak of, really, it's
definition of cheating, isn't it? It's just cheating.
So, it is. What is it about these athletes that they can just get away with it? And actually, what the ethos was actually down to the charisma. So when we look back at people who have gotten for example, Tiger Woods for years was the dude, was the geezer. And if you go speak to my nan, for example, she loves Tiger Woods, couldn't do no wrong. I pull up, I say, he was caught doing this and that, and the next thing, she goes, nah, doesn't matter. Tiger's Tiger. Tiger's Tiger.
Tiger, and he wears red on a Sunday. So.
Yeah. We have these people we idolise, and just what is it about them? Why is it that? And athletes are a great example of that. Sir Alex Ferguson, immense leadership. Rio Ferdinand, you can argue Frank Lampard. For me, I was a big boxing fan. So likes of Tyson Fury, hugely charismatic guy. Hugely.
So good.
I see, even like his career itself can be like the definition of charisma. Like before he ended up winning it, before he beat fuck man, I wish I never started this with him. Who'd they beat?
Deontay Wilder. He beat Deontay Wilder.
No, before that, to win the world championship, before he went down a big spiral.
The German.
Klitschko.
When he beat Klitschko, he said before it, when I beat him, it's me, I've completed it. And to go in that big downward spiral, to come back, to beat Deontay Wilder twice in my opinion, but who am I? It's like the definition of like maybe charisma in itself, because he's so humble, he's so honest, he's so open, he just doesn't hide anything. To be that open and honest, like it takes a lot.
I think one of the things that ties into him on the program I do is talk about is vulnerability. Like, it's actually not a bad thing. Some people always get a bit caught up about showing a side to them that's like not as bad, like something that might be perceived, something that's like not great. However, sometimes being a bit more upfront, vulnerable, comes across so authentic. When you look at Tyson Fury, that's him. Like, there's no agenda there. That is the geezer.
Nah, you're so right.
And then when you talk about like sports personalities specifically, if you look at someone like Marcus Rashford recently, see when you see him in like interviews and stuff like that, he is quite reserved and whatever. But then it must take some sort of charisma, confidence to go and run this campaign for the whole of England to get free school meals for kids. Do you know what I mean? And it's like it's so funny when you actually start thinking about it. And I probably didn't think about it as much until we're having this conversation.
The way he's handled himself in the media has been unbelievable. He's been interviewed by everybody. Who else do you think's charismatic? And what about politicians? Why do they get away with everything as well? Because I don't think they're charismatic. I think they're arseholes. They honestly, I just don't agree with
it now, Kenny.
Why is Boris Johnson still got a job?
Listen, there's loads of things, and humans are fantastic, complex creatures. But the other thing is that, like computers, we can be hacked, and there's little nuances and little things that politicians do that work, that get people riled up and get people to like you. For example, Donald Trump has been an infamous man. I know he sits on the fence quite a lot where you like him or love him or loathe him or whatever, but the people who do like him are like rock solid, cannot change my mind, he is the dude. And a lot of it isn't based around what his policies are, it's about him as a person.
Have you seen the social media and the social dilemma and the Great Hack? Have you seen them?
No, go tell me more.
It's just that, like, Donald Trump is Donald Trump. He's Marmite. You love him or hate him. Me personally, I find him quite funny. I think it's like a TV show. I don't think it's real life.
Because we don't live in America, eh?
Yes.
So the Great Hack's all about how they got him into office, and it's all about Cambridge Analytica and how they had so many what was it called? They called it touch points on everybody in America. So they knew everything you clicked into, everything you liked, disliked, all your friends. And I don't know if you remember Facebook when it was kind of just becoming very mainstream. They used to have like wee quizzes. And it'd be like, what's your personality? Take this quiz.
Yeah.
So Facebook had all that information. Cambridge Analytica came up with that quiz, so they were getting all that information. So when it came to Donald Trump's campaign, Cambridge Analytica could send you personalised ads to like Donald Trump, and it all sends you ads to dislike Hillary Clinton.
Yeah,
and he only won his presidency by 70,000 votes in one state, purely by targeted ads, whether to like or dislike Trump or Clinton. So that's you could watch it. You watch him.
Absolutely. But then the thing is there ties into it is the fact that, back to what we're saying, but charisma is about releasing an individual's dopamine. So they've obviously tied into that. They know what people love and they know what people hate. So they can actually tailor something around to just release dopamine all day, every day. And as humans, we always go for what we like, what releases this chemical. We don't think, it's releasing this chemical, let's go for this. But naturally, we do things we like, we hang around people we like, and we watch things that we like, and we always go back to it. That's why people binge watch Netflix series over and over again, even though
I
goes over
so
and over
do
again.
that, man.
And over again because it releases it and we like it, even though we know what's going to happen and we know the anticipation's all gone. It's all about releasing this thing. So it's, if you can understand that, when you go into a conversation or you're trying to win someone over in a job or trying to get someone to your way of thinking, you can actually put that at the forefront. You go, what am I going to do, say, or
oh no, you froze.
Whatever to release this person's dopamine, and then you can start like playing.
Yeah. You're fine. You're fine. You're back. You froze for a wee minute.
Yeah. So Thermal Combat is the master of that.
So,
sorry.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine now. You're fine now.
So, one thing I was going to kind of mention or bring up was you obviously do a lot of studying into the way people act and speak and how they come across and whatever. But see people like motivational speakers, or not even motivational speakers, but we were watching. I love Matthew McConaughey, right?
You've got such a man crush, man. He is unbelievable, though.
He is amazing. I'm not going to lie.
He was on the podcast literally the other day, wasn't he?
It was. That's why I brought it up to Kenny and I said that Matthew McConaughey was on. And I started watching. I watched about half an hour of it last night before I went to bed, and he's just amazing. But Kenny showed me a video that I'd never seen before, and it was an acceptance speech where he won an Oscar. But see these guys that like motivational speakers and stuff. Do you study anything like that? Because from what I can see, obviously I'm not the expert. You are, so I just see these sort of people as what should I say here? Is that the sort of art of charisma? Is being able to just come out with something that you do you know what I'm trying to say? I'm absolutely butchering this here.
The difference is, so what the things that I study is that is an element of psychology, but there's also an element of the people that I look at are successful people. What's made them successful? Why have they been able to get in the positions they are? And so there's a degree of like celebrities that we do study, and because they're the easiest to look at. For example, a lot of what we look at is Will Smith, an infamously charismatic, McConaughey, these sort of geezers. What are they doing, saying, whatever, that we can actually take and apply into our own lives and see how that sort of works in that respect? So there's a degree of looking at celebrities. But the reason why it's not always good to look at motivational speakers, just necessarily because of the personality types, because sometimes it's quite easy to think that to be charismatic, I have to be the funny guy, or I have to be the loudest guy, or have the best whatever. But actually, there's introverts who can be immensely charismatic. We were talking there about, Sir Alex Ferguson. Sir Alex Ferguson, I don't think was the funny guy of the dressing room, but was a charismatic dude. And then you have the extrovert, the Keith Lemon, infamously out there wild guy. And then you even have the people in the middle who are like what's known as ambiverts, the people who are extrovert in some situations and then introverted in other situations. And so everybody has this different personality type. So, when we're having to come up with a program, it's really good to tailor it to someone, because the key thing about charisma is being authentic. Mm-hmm. And sometimes like the motivational, sort of almost like pyramid scheme sort of sellers, it does come across as a bit inauthentic. Mm-hmm. And what I'm trying to teach is like, it's a way of being authentic, being about true to yourself, about what works for you, what you feel comfortable doing, and then trying it around that sort of way.
You said like in different situations, do you mean like, so take, say for example, Sir Alex Ferguson, he would never walk into a room, a dinner of 200 people and be the loudest person there. But he walks into a changing room and he's confident in what he knows. And is that why, do you think, that they're kind of different?
Yeah, so confidence is a really interesting part, because what we believe is the fact is that confidence doesn't come overnight. Very similar to what we were saying right at the beginning, is that confidence comes when you get competent at something. So when you get good at something, the more confident you become. So for example, if you feel nervous when you walk into a room of 200 people, that's not very competent. You don't do it that often. So what we recommend is actually doing it on such a smaller scale. Start doing it in front of, Sir Alex Ferguson was not started walking into rooms of 200 people. He started doing it in front of 5 people, then 10 people, and then worked his way up to 200 people. And then when he worked in front of 11 players in front of him, it was easy, So it's about working that in. So it's the same in a social situation. A lot of people get social anxiety. The thought of going to a gig, or the thought of going to a pub crawl or something like that just kind of, makes them shut down. Don't just jump in straight away. It's about working your way up to that. So, start off small and then start building up.
100%. Right.
Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. But I found that the person I was before I went to college is totally different for the person I was 2 days after college.
You spoke about that,
I was like, right, I've got an opportunity here to just be whoever I want to be, because the people in this room don't know me. But there was one guy, Scott Dunny, Gavin Dunny. Aye, that's why I call him Dunny, because he's Scott Dunn. I was like, he went to my high school. I know he went to my high school, and I was very shy, very reserved, very. I was just a pure introvert, just because I didn't know anybody. So I was like, oh, he's gonna know who I am. And I thought, nah, I just want to be upbeat, outgoing, the kind of popular guy in the room, and that's what I kind of didn't impose it on everybody, but I was just like, I'm going to be quite loud, and I'm going to be open, I'm going to be funny, talkative, and it kind of worked for me. It definitely, like, people did like me. I was the class rep. But nah, like, I do think it's a state of mind. Like, it's not just some, like you said, it's not something that happens overnight. I just seen this opportunity to become somebody different, and I thought, I just got to take it. I was a bit older. I wasn't a 12-year-old kid. Like, I think I was 19. Was I 20? Maybe I was 20.
It's funny you say that, because I could never imagine Kenny as being an introvert or like being shy, or obviously you've taken this new kind of lease of life and ran with it, because it's you. That's probably who you actually are, and know this shy guy.
School, I didn't have the opportunity to be that person. You're right. I
always believe there's
confident. It's funny because like when you were talking about it, the first thing I was kind of thinking was like in work. So I work in sales as well, and basically, like, if I moved to a new sales job, or when I maybe became the sales manager as such, see that there's a like, but see, once you know, like, I could walk in and they could ask me pretty much any question and I would know the answer. So going into work, like, I don't feel in the slightest bit that, I shouldn't be here, or I shouldn't be in this position, or what. But it's really interesting because it's so true.
Yeah, and the better you get at something, the more confident you become at that particular thing. And so because salespeople, I put us in the same campus. Footballers, we're like precious. We've got, big egos, and we've got to like be handled with care and things like that. But when you're going from it, especially in sales jobs, when you've gone from selling a large amount and you've been like the dude, and then you've gone to a new job and you don't know the product, you don't know the customers, you don't know anything. You're like, I've gone from hero to zero here. Yeah. What's happened? And then it takes time to sort of build that up there.
I actually got an example of that. So I'd left the gym for a year to go and try. I basically knew a guy who was a recruitment manager in Glasgow.
Okay.
And I'd got in contact with him, and he'd offered me a recruitment consultant job. And I thought, I'm going to go try this. So see walking in from being the sales manager to being a recruitment associate. I wasn't even a consultant. I was like an associate. So,
okay, yes, you were the guy helping the guy.
So I was like starting from the very, very bottom. I'm still doing the job.
Bottom.
Now we're no here.
and we're still there.
but like, I remember walking in, and I'm used to being on the phone to people. I'm used to seeing people face to face and whatever. But I remember, like, first couple of days, it was all like kind of training and stuff like that. And then it came to a point where I had to contact somebody and ask if they needed staff. And I remember, like, going on the phone thinking, I can't be fine, I'm on the phone. And then they started, I basically was recruiting for, like, it was PVG candidates, so people who had disclosure checks for, like, care homes, and it was all catering people, so, like, chefs. So I remember, like, the first phone call, speaking to her, and she was like, oh, yeah, we need somebody in this date, because they were already a client. And she said, like, I need a CDP, right? And I was like, what the fuck is a CDP? Right? And it was a chef. It was a chef de partie, but I never knew that at the time. And I remember coming off that call thinking, "Oh my god, like, I'm so uncomfortable right now."
I would have just went, that's no worries.
I know you would have.
Hey, how many do you want? I've got 4 sitting here now. They're ready to go.
I didn't even know she was talking about chefs, or she was talking about fucking aprons. She could have been talking about anything. And I'd have been like, just quite put me in hold. But it's funny because I've actually experienced it, like going from being somebody who knew pretty much everything about the job to then going into something new and thinking, fucking hell, am I out of my head here? But
Is that your worst experience for that sort of situation, Gav?
What, not knowing something or being
I just
uncomfortable?
not knowing something in the deep end, being uncomfortable. Is that your worst experience?
Probably, I'd probably say it is because of where I had been and then where I'd went to. Not that it was like this, but it was just a bit
a total
strange.
different field.
It brought me out of my comfort zone so much.
Aye.
But aye, that's probably what I would say. What's
What
yours?
about you, Sebastian? What's your most uncomfortable moment?
Oh, man, how long have you got, man? I've had and the reason why I've got into this is because I've had years of putting my foot in my mouth, years of doing it wrong, that now I can understand how to go about it somewhat right.
Mhm.
I've had some really good... When I was, I don't know why I didn't say this again, but when I was 15, I was Scotland's youngest stand-up comedian. I thought I was the funniest geezer going. And I've had many bombs on stage where I thought I was funny and didn't have the foggiest clue. I've had that. I've been in nightclubs trying to chat at birds, completely struck out. And then I've been in jobs where I've completely blagged my way into a job, like the Mercedes. And then for the first couple of weeks, I've gone, oh my God, they're going to see through me here. What is going on here? So it's happened many, many times for me, to be honest.
What about you, Kenny?
Yeah, Kenny, come on.
Hey. So obviously I went travelling. Everybody who's listened to the podcast knows that. So me and my mate Keezy only had a week's worth of money, so we needed jobs, and we ended up going to this. Was that a sales kind of guy? They sold timeshares, right? So you had to get people to set up meetings.
Wall Street, Kenny.
That's what it was. Aye. So we had penny stocks, and I said, "Sell me this pen." No, right. So what it was a kind of scratch card thing, right? So you had to set a criteria. So you had a criteria of like, they had to be a family, they had to be on holiday, they had to have, they looked like they had a bit of money. And you go, do you like a free scratch card? And you knew what was a winner, what was a loser. And you would just hand them out throughout the day. And then when somebody won something, you had to get them to pay a deposit of like $100. And I'm like, $100, man, that's so much money.
Just from a complete stranger as well, eh?
Exactly. They just gave you that $100, put it in an envelope and said, be here tomorrow at 10 o'clock, you won't meet me. Like, I would be like that. Nah, mate.
No.
You're cool. Thanks,
yeah.
So you were selling them, you would go like, you get a free stay, an overnight stay at this big fancy hotel, even for just going for the sit down and that. So that was just so awkward. Like, even at one point, this woman walked by and was like, I've had these before, can I get another one? And I'm like, yeah, if you want. I'm like, knowing like there's a wee loser. I've never won this. I've never won. I'm like, all right. And then this family looking up, I'm like, what do I do here? Like, I just my conscience knowing that I'm swindling people, that I'm manipulating people, going, that's a winner, you can take that, and go, well, why don't you come to this? Nah, I just didn't feel so uncomfortable. 2 days, never again, man. Didn't go back.
Yeah. That's a tough gig. That is a real tough gig. But it's funny you should say that about manipulating. I think people, throughout, we kind of touched on it early on, but people throughout history, like of the Wolf of Wall Street and, other people who have been charismatic and have used it in a bad way, but at the same time it can be used in a good way. And there was people there who were smashing it, selling timeshares to,
There was people doing that, aye.
I've actually...
Oh no, it's just not for me.
I've just remembered, Kenny, you'll probably remember this. I might have told a wee bit of a lie there, because I think my most uncomfortable moment, when I finished college, I did a job in JD Sports, right, part-time, just like whatever. I went to college, and then I left college and I went for a job interview, and it was like a sales person, a sales assistant or whatever. It was for a company called G10 Global, all right? So basically what it was, they had loads of different campaigns, but you didn't get paid. It was commission only. It was one of these sort of jobs. So the campaign that I was working on was, there was a kind of, what do you call it, like a beauty kind of parlour, beauty salon in St Enoch Square in Glasgow city centre. Yeah. And we had to sell these like certificates, and it was basically like a pamper day for people to go, and it was 30 quid, right? And they would go there and get their hair, their makeup done, and then have a photo shoot. And the way they made the money was they sold the photos, obviously, to these people. But I remember, getting the job. I went in for the interview, and the guy, George, his name was, offered me the job like there and then. And I was like, my God, this is my first kind of big job. Do you know what I mean? And then he said, oh, you know, what's the pay? Oh, it's commission. I was like, all right, okay. Like, I was only 18 or something at the time, so I was like, right, brilliant. But I remember the first day, like, see, trying to approach somebody on a street, on Argyle Street in Glasgow City Centre on a Saturday.
Aye.
That was fucking petrifying. Like, I've never been so scared in my life.
Especially Glasgow, man.
But see, to be fair, I say to this day, it's probably one of the most important jobs or the most important things I've ever done, because that was a real tipping point for me. See, when you're saying, Kenny, like, you went to college and became a different person, I was able to. I didn't feel uncomfortable speaking to random people, and that's probably why I ended up in sales as well, because I quite enjoy speaking to people, like people I've not met before and whatever. But that was petrifying, like so terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, I take my hat off to you, Gavin. I mean, that's a serious. Same with you, Kenny, man. You're better than me. But, you know, it's so interesting, the lessons that you would have learned about people, and you would have even gotten, like, you both of you would have gotten you a little bit of patter. You know, this works. And, you know, if I say this, it won't work. And so you end up kind of devising this little kind of system in your own head naturally. And so what I try to say is, like, why can you not use that same system when you're meeting people in a social life, or why can you not meet it in a job interview? You know, it's the same environment. You know, it's interesting.
It's funny when you say that,
formula.
Yeah.
It's funny when you say, because like I remember in that job specifically, like having different pitches to different types of people. So I'd have, like, you know, maybe a kind of older woman, maybe like in her 60s or whatever, and I'm getting up and saying, oh, you know, where did you get your hair done? And she's like, what? And I'm like, oh no, it looks beautiful, but where'd you get it done? I'll tell you why. And then, so get into these, and then if you had like a young girl, maybe in her 20s or something, or similar ages to me at the time, you're getting in with a bit of a flirtatious approach, and and if it's a guy, you're like, oh, you know, where's your missus getting her hair done?
And you know, it's great what you've done there, Gavin, because you've actually tapped into something that we actually even talk about, just naturally, just through your own sort of way of doing it. And it's about conversation starters. That's sometimes the hardest bit, is what do I say to someone when I first meet them? And what you've just done there is what we call a compliment with a cold read. And so that's when you say something nice about someone and then follow it up with an assumption. And to be fair, the assumption doesn't really matter as a proper thing, just to get them talking. Because if you start off a conversation with, hey, how are you? What do you do for a living? It's no releasing the dopamine. Whereas the things that you were doing was taking people back because they've not heard it before. And if they've not heard it before, it's different. And if it's different, you've got a better chance of releasing that dopamine. So, for example, if you were to say something like, oh, you've got, you know, great style, do you work in fashion? And then they'll go, oh, no, sorry, I work in marketing, or I work in finance, or whatever. Or you can go up to someone and say, you know, you look really athletic. Do you play sport? Do you go to the gym? And they go, yeah. Oh, I don't go to the gym. I play football on a Friday. And then you can start talking to them about that. And then you can see there's a little bit of a passion there. So what you were doing was pure natural instinct. And that's always a good way to try and kickstart a conversation. If you don't know what to say, that's a really good way to start.
Like open-ended questions and stuff like that, isn't it? Like
open questions.
If something's open-ended, I'm going, excuse me, have you got a minute? No, I've no. See you later.
Yeah, cheers, bye, bang that.
Bye.
They actually did a study on Tinder openers, and they said the ones that always work the best.
So you need to tell us some stories about that.
Because there's stuff on your website about that as well, isn't there? Not so much about Tinder openers, but there's.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's fascinating because irrelevant of what we kind of touch on the three pillars, that charisma can bleed into your professional and your personal life. So whether it's your career, whether it's your, you know, personal life, like a social life, or if it's like, you know, girlfriends, boyfriends, whatever it could be, it's relatively all the same. The only difference is that you might have to tailor it for the situation and the person. But Tinder openers, the research that they found was the fact is that words like hey were the worst, as you could imagine, and words that open up with questions and things about them, even phrases like how's your day been going, were better than everything. Now, they were just the best to get response from. They weren't the best that resulted in dates. So that's always a really good way to kind of kickstart something, is just get it off with a question, get people talking.
So,
and if you can get people talking about themselves, that's a really good
point.
I know, I was going to say, so what is the Art of Charisma website? So it says you do everything with regards to, like, from companies to persons to groups, like,
yeah.
Is it in everything? Is charisma everyday life? Is it something that's you need? Is it something that people either, like you're saying, it's a skill, but is there a way that, you know, are some people either going to get it or not get it? That's kind of what I'm getting at there. Are you either going to learn it or not learn it? You know, some people just kind of get their head around things, or are you very confident in being able to bring somebody around and coach them to be charismatic?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about 100 different ways of what charisma means to different people and how we can identify it in different people. But I'm going to boil it down to you. This is the 100% of what you need to be charismatic. And this is what we teach. The Art of Charisma program is literally just 6 modules. And all right, if you become excellent at a particular module, you'll be brilliant at that particular area. However, when you put it all together, that's when the magic really starts happening. So the modules go as follows. It's a first impression. So Gavin, when you were talking earlier on about having to walk up to someone, you know, the success you would have had is how do you make a really good first impression? And, you know, when you're in a job interview, when you first meet someone, they'll just instantly see you and go, right, how do I think of this person? Because humans, like it or loathe it, we do judge people, and within the first couple of seconds, it is crucial. Now, that's not something to be intimidated by. It's actually something that you can hack to make a really killer first impression. It's also, next module, is having a great conversation with someone. So how do you get someone opening up? How do you get the chat going? And that could be, we don't talk about small talk. We try to avoid small talk, but we call it big talk. How do you get to those topics that get people excited, get their juices flowing? Whether it's about the football or about their passion projects, how do you get onto that there? The next bit is telling an amazing story. What makes a good story? How do you make a story out of nothing? Like out of just going to the shops. How do you do that? And how do you really captivate someone so that they'll listen to you? Sir Alex Ferguson, always good. He probably told great stories in the dressing room. The next one is magnetic presence. How do you create a presence that when you walk in, people go, that's the geezer that I want. Whatever it is, I don't know what it is about him or her or whoever, that's the person we want. And the last 2 are confidence, which we've talked a little bit about, competence, and leadership. Now, all those put together create a charisma aura. Now, it doesn't matter, as we talked about before, if you're extroverted, of course, you can, you know, be a good leader, which sometimes is associated with it, but you can be a great leader if you're an introvert. And you can have great conversations if you're extroverted or introverted. It doesn't matter. But it's when you put those all together, that's when it's good. And it can be applied in different situations, as you were saying, Kenny. You know, whether you're in a business, you're going to need to build a relationship. If you're a manager of a gym, for example, you know, how are you going to get a team to put in the extra hours to really work for you? You're going to have to build a great relationship, and they're going to need to like you at the end of the day. How are you going to make clients part with cold, hard cash, like in Gavin's job? How are they going to do it? They're going to do it if they like you. If they don't like you, jog on, pal. You know, that's what it is. And then how are you going to make a social circle, which ultimately might lead to a potential partner, or that you can build a support network? They're going to want to like you. You know, they're going to have to enjoy your company, enjoy what you have to come to the table with. And so that is all it. So yes, it might seem like we do a bit of this and a bit of that, a bit of everything. However, the principles can apply across, you know, the whole spectrum of it. So it's a lot. There is a lot there. However, if you can just tap into a few bits, you can, you know, the world's your oyster.
It says that, like natural charm, employability, increased confidence, communication, relationship building, and leadership. Do you think you have it all?
No, I'm constantly working in it all.
I think you've got it all, mate.
He has. Of course he has, Gav, man.
But you can tell when somebody speaks, and everyone listens. Do you know what I mean? I think that's an art in itself, because when you're speaking, like, I'm brutally honest, I'm normally on the podcast, you're kind of thinking, right, I'm listening obviously, but I'm kind of thinking what I'm going to say next, and I'm thinking down the line. Kenny's the same. But when you're speaking there, I was like,
what is the next bit? What is the next module?
I wasn't even thinking about it.
I just talk rubbish. Is that you? I just don't know.
No, so I was actually engrossed in what you were saying. Do you know what I mean? It was because you're speaking sense and it's true. So normally, as I say, I would normally be thinking ahead, but I didn't. I was sitting just listening to what you were saying.
Enjoying the moment.
Absolutely. And you touched on it earlier on, Kenny, about mindset. Mindset, how you get, and that does play a lot into the charisma. For example, and I've touched a bit on this on my social media, about people who find themselves like a little bit I'm going to say it. Like, people find themselves boring, and we'll know people in our own lives who deem themselves boring or who we think are boring. And the best way to kind of get rid of that, if you feel like I haven't got anything good to talk about, or I don't have any good stories, or all those sort of things that some people do doubt themselves in, the best thing to do is to just put yourself out there a little bit more. And what I mean by that is do things for the story. Do things for the story. And that's the advice I like to give a lot of people. So, for example, if you go to a restaurant and it turns out to be bad, don't tie yourself up into thinking, oh my God, this is going to be awful. You just go, because then in which case, when you go back into work on Monday and they say, what did you get up to the weekend? You can say, oh my God, I went to this restaurant. It was awful. It was this, it was that. And you've at least got something to talk about and people can pick up from there. So when I see people who are boring, they're not really boring. They're just a bit lazy. They're not going out there. They're not doing stuff. They're not signing up to stuff. And that's really the crux of it. And that's really where it begins. The other side of it is about giving more ammunition than you really need. So, for example, 100% it will happen. You'll meet someone for the first time and they'll say, what do you do for a living? Now, you could quite easily say, I work in sales. And that's 100% true. However, you're not giving the other person a whole lot to go off of there. Mm-hmm. You're not really giving it. So when we say about ammunition, apologies, I played too many video games growing up. So I talk about like Call of Duty. Spreading as much ammunition as possible. So think of it like that way. So when someone says, what do you do for a living? You can say, I work in sales at a gym in Glasgow. And then they've got several things there to talk to you. They go, oh, whereabouts in Glasgow? Or, Jim, oh, I'm awful at going to the gym. You need to go more often. How long have you been working there? And so much there to go off of, just kickstart a conversation. So there's plenty of techniques to go in there, whether it's meeting a girl, trying to build up a social life, or get a job. It's all going to be applied in the same situation.
That's so true.
It's flow, and it's trying to keep the conversation flowing. It's not just like being charismatic, it's just having questions on questions, like you said, having ammunition.
Absolutely. No, and one of the good ways to do that, if you're ever getting into an awkward silence, this is a perfect thing to do. So
I address an awkward silence. I say, I just address an awkward silence. Go, this is getting awkward. Like, and people laugh. See, it's diffused. There you go. Stop being awkward. Talk.
I love that. I think I need to keep that one. Just
address it.
Stay how it is. But one of the great ways that if you sometimes get a bit uncomfortable in awkward situations, or you find that you need to fill the silence with something, it's always a great way to use the phrase, this reminds me of. So this reminds me of. So for example, if you're in a restaurant and there's a song playing, you can pick up on that and say, this reminds me of a time, blah, blah, and then tell the story. Or you could be sitting on a hill looking at, Glasgow, and you can go, looking at this reminds me of a time when and then start off telling a story that way. And it's just a little phrase that you can use just to try and never have an awkward silence if you don't. Or you could just say, this is awkward as hell.
That is scary. That honestly, obviously speaking for you, Kenny, that is scary. And that's why, but Kenny's probably one of the most likeable people. And I'm not just saying this because he's here and he's my mate, right?
Yes, saying that.
He's one of the most likeable people because you can't even like him because of how honest he is. See the other day, right? Give an example, Kenny. I don't know if you picked up on this, but Kenny was coming into work and he messaged me and he says, I'm just coming in, do you want to pop down? I says, right, okay. So I walked down the stair. I get to Kenny's car and he's like, fucking hell, Gavin, you have been drinking red wine, your teeth are pure. Your teeth are pure. And I was like, only Kenny could say that. Do you know what I mean? Because he's just.
I didn't mean it to be cheeky, though. I was just
I know,
saying.
I know that.
Aye, that's fine. Gee, I can't believe I airing this out on the podcast.
One of the things I think is Kenny got, and you've got it as well, Gavin, is authenticity, being genuine, being authentic. Because similar to pointing out, we can tell when someone's being charismatic. We can also tell when someone's being inauthentic and being disingenuous. So I think trying to be as genuine as possible is really, really important. And how do you be authentic? Well, you stick to your opinions. You don't, just say what you like if you don't like it. Don't be afraid to sometimes voice your opinion, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if it goes one way or the other. You've got something to talk about, doesn't it? I think that's really key.
That's what I find. I'm shite at lying. Let's just be honest. You kind of, if you said that, I probably did die. You're right. Sorry, mate.
No, but I don't take offence to it.
No,
It was
I know,
like when you said it, I was actually chuckling inside because I'm like, fuck, that's typical Kenny. Like he would just say things like,
"Oh, that's nice. That's nice that you thought it like that." It
One of
made
the
me
things
think.
that
It made me think I need a bottle of wine. I didn't think red wine in ages.
what you said, Sebastian?
I was going to say, it just ties back into the very beginning about what you were saying about a large proportion of your audience is English. And I think that Scottish people have a great sense of humour, a great way of being authentic. And I think that's one of the reasons why when you go around the world, people say, oh, I know a Scottish guy. When you're travelling, they go, oh, I know a Scottish guy, the legend. The Scottish people have this innate, almost natural ability to be charismatic. You kind of see it bob around and, I'm going to probably just like alienate half your audience, but Southern English people do have a tendency to be, infamously uncharismatic, and then Northerners of England tend to be famously charismatic, and Scottish people and Irish people, they just have this natural charm about them.
100%.
Especially the Irish. It's hard to dislike an Irish person.
It is.
I don't know.
Just when you hear them speak, first of all, their accents are just great.
Aye.
But I was going to say there, Kenny, like I spoke about this to the Guinness guru that we had on previously as well, and I told a story about being in Ireland, and I thought people were being rude, but they weren't being rude. So basically, I was in a bar, I was in a kind of nightclub pub thing, and I was sitting. And in Glasgow, if somebody walked over, right, and put their jacket over your chair with your jacket on it, you're thinking, what the fuck are you doing? Like, so in Dublin, this guy walked over, and I was with my pal, and he put the jacket over my jacket, but it wasn't even like a back; it was like over the seat. And I kind of looked at him, and I was like, "You all right?" And he was like, "How you doing, mate?" And blah blah blah. I just started talking away, and I was like, "They're not being rude; they just don't really take themselves too seriously, and they're so out there, and they're brilliant." And I know what you're saying when you say like Southern England. I get it, because like quite a lot of people speak about going down to London or whatever and like smiling at people. How to make an English person feel awkward is you just smile at them because they, but that's that. I'm not saying it's true, but that is the kind of general feeling about it. So it's definitely true.
Yeah, it's so interesting when you go around the world in different places, even in different occupations. People who are in one occupation like sales, notoriously people. But then you might go into IT and infamously, even, people. Not saying that's true, but it's just interesting when you kind of meet different things. And sometimes it's about identifying the personality, like what type of personality is this person, and how can I, match or kind of get them. Salespeople are notoriously like out there, loud, bish bosh bash, don't need to think about it, let's just get the job done. And then we do not really like people who are quite analytical, people who are quite, like the finer detail, because we're just like, bish, bosh, bash, come on, let's get it done, let's get it out there. Where they're like, no, wait, patience, let's have a look, let's see what it is.
Understand.
Yeah. But the good thing is that when you can see that, then you can go, so this person isn't really a dickhead. They're just a personality type that I need to sort of match with. They're not really being somebody who's like being awkward or difficult. They're just actually just a bit of a personality clash.
Nice.
I went to. Sorry, on you go, mate.
Sorry. I was just going to say, do you do like events in like public speaking, Sebastian? Or?
No, actually, funny still, I've never actually done any public speaking or any sort of like events. I used to run some workshops with like small groups where we would cover like charisma, try and get a little bit of question answer, how they can help each other, try and build up a little bit of a support network. We do offer like coaching, training sessions and things like that, but never any public speaking. But I would never like diss it out to be honest with you. But I don't know who would be wanting to listen to me for ages, to be honest with you, rambling on, to be fair.
Many people, hopefully loads of people in this. But, just
that's
when
very true.
Just when it's saying your website, you'd worked with like your clients were Mercedes, Adidas, Vodafone and Boots. I was like, maybe he's done not so much public speaking, like you say, like small groups and events and stuff like that. Like, that's a very good CV, man.
I would imagine, is that, Sebastian, sorry for butting in, mate, is that more like, say for example, a sales team? Do you think like Mercedes or Adidas are saying, our sales team maybe have a group session with Sebastian to try and help them become more kind of charismatic and confident and whatever?
Yeah, it was interesting with Adidas, to be honest with you. So I've worked with a numbers of different like household name, Boots, Vodafone, Adidas, as you've mentioned there. We're on the framework for the Department of Work and Pensions, so the Job Centre. I've also worked with the formerly incarcerated. I've worked with unemployed, complete cross-section of people with different backgrounds. Salespeople naturally know what they're doing and what's going on. So the areas that I always like try to implement sort of techniques and advantage to is actually sometimes not the salespeople, the obvious ones. It's sometimes HR, it's IT, it's people who struggle with communicating. And then on the top level, I work with CEOs and managers, because managers are sometimes that nice little middle ground where they get on really well with maybe one or two members of staff, and they get on really well with like upper management and clients, because upper managers, they're just interested in the facts and figures. How much you sold, how much you done this, have you done all that? Brilliant. I'll see you next week then.
Your Wi-Fi's went. Sebastian, come back. We're getting to the good bit. Right,
Kenny, I've just paused it.
I'll pause it as well.
Yeah, crack on.
Go. Let's this.
So managers have been sort of my bread and butter, that sort of middle level, because managers get on really well with, CEOs and all that sort of jazz. People above them, because people above them are really interested in facts and figures. If you can deliver that, then you can, you're on good side of them. And they might have a couple of pals underneath them, the junior members of staff and things like that. But outside of the Monday morning, what did you get up to the weekend? All right, okay, that's interesting. Did you watch the football? Brilliant. Yeah, me too. Outside of that, they'll always wonder why they're not getting people to put in an extra hour here and there. They'll always wonder why, they're kind of always a bit short on target, why people are not motivated, how people are not working.
Sebastian's internet connection's not playing the game, is it, man?
He's away.
Is it away? No.
No, he's back. He's back.
He's still here. Calm down, Gavin, man. You're so dismissive there. That was unbelievable, man. Your faith in the internet connection of Alloa is absolutely disgraceful.
Oh God! Don't worry, Gavin. It's fine. I'm still here. It's probably just me talking too much.
I imagine that your internet connection can't keep up with the speed that you're talking, like that. Something's going on in Alloa. There's so much talking going on.
So do you actually still live in Alloa? Or are you in Edinburgh now?
Yeah, I'm the only person with internet connection in Alloa. I'm the only person with internet connection.
Right. Well, Sebastian, I've got one question that we ask all our guests, right? But just before we do it, Kenny, is there anything else you kind of want to speak about?
Well, I was thinking this today. We're going to start asking everybody this question also. We should probably put it in before, because the most interesting question is the last question. We should probably put this, because this is quite an interesting question. Anyway, Sebastian, you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes. What is your guilty pleasure?
Oh God, guilty pleasure. Can I be honest with you?
That's what we're looking for. We're looking for honesty.
Can I be brutal?
Oh, be brutally honest. Brutally honest.
Guilty pleasure is at 3 a.m. J-Lo, Jenny from the Block, when that comes on, that is my tune, and I get on the dance floor and I cut shapes like nobody has ever cut shapes before. And I'm embarrassed to admit it, but that tune is literally my life and blood soul. And I changed Jenny to Sebi because I think I'm cool that way. I think I'm Sebi from the Block. People are looking at me going, "Oh, you madman, you utter mentalist." It's a different zone at the moment. I'm on a different planet here. I'm just loving my. So my guilty pleasure is loving really cheesy 90s hits. And just dancing.
Jenny for the Block was not 90s. Definitely not, man.
Early noughties. Right, Gav, you charge on the last question. I need to find out what No,
out, man.
I want to hear your guilty pleasure, Kenny, because you've
I came up with it. What is my guilty pleasure?
No, you need to think the spot.
I wish we'd 2002. You're close to the 90s. 2002.
There you go.
Oh, Gav, man, we shouldn't have came to this. We shouldn't have done it. Each other. We shouldn't have. Secret eating, man. I just love a chippy every now and then. I just love just coming home from work at after o'clock and going, I need a wee chippy, man. Just eating. That's my guilty pleasure, man.
You're going to say like a wee afternoon beer, because sometimes you'll message
us
like
definitely, aye. No, aye. Right, well, that as well. Like sometimes I could definitely go a beer at like 11. Like, aye, because lockdown. That's probably
absolutely
that's encouraged that habit. But at what point does it not become a guilty pleasure when you do it that often?
God, a beer at midday lunch, yeah,
it's a tasty treat, innit? There you go. Gav, God. Guilty pleasure. You obviously had a couple of minutes to think about it, so.
I've had a couple of minutes, but it's not helped because I've been thinking about asking you.
People always think like TV shows. I always think like people will go, "Oh, I love X Factor," or "Oh, I love this thing on Netflix." I really shouldn't, whatever.
I'll say it to see if Paula listens to this. Right, she's been itching for months to watch Desperate Housewives, so we've started watching Desperate Housewives, and we're about 7 episodes in, and I'm like, "It's just not bad, by the way." So that might be one as well.
That's your guilty pleasure, Kenny. That wins it. That wins it.
Okay. Gav, go.
I'd probably say mine is like a really cheesy sort of like rom-com type of film.
Okay. No, that's shite. No.
Hey, Kenny, doesn't matter what you think. That's my guilty pleasure.
Right, okay.
See, sometimes you get pure into it, or maybe not so much a rom-com, but see like a film like Marley and Me, right? I'm not afraid to admit it. I'll fucking bawled my eyes out.
Toy Story 3 and all that.
Sebastian, my wee girl loves the Toy Stories. Unbelievable, man. Right. I have been in tears for Toy Story 2, tears, 3, tears, 4, tears, 3 more so than most. Oh, that's a rough ride, man. Tough.
Yeah, I get that. Guilty pleasure is such a funny one, man. People don't admit it, but I think people should embrace it. Like, I think it's just interesting.
Definitely.
Oh, it's brilliant.
Like, sorry.
There's a good opening line. What's your guilty pleasure?
But then people
that could be a bit saucy. I thought, how saucy we going here? I don't want to get the answer.
Aye. Well, you give a cracker. That's a belter answer, though.
Right, so we've had Jerry from the Block. We've had Kenny and his Desperate Housewives, and we've had rom-coms, teary rom-coms. But so Sebastian...
What about John Tucker's Must Die, Gav? Do you like that? Do you feel like that?
I don't think I've seen it, mate.
Right, okay. Right, last question. Last day.
Right, Sebastian, so we ask all guests this question. So, yeah, here it is. So if you could have one drink and one drink only, what would you have and who would it be with?
Oh, great question. So one drink with one famous, and is it a famous person? Is it someone dead or alive, or
anybody you want, dead or alive, famous or infamous?
Famous or infamous. Okay. This is going to be completely against the grain and no charisma aspect to it whatsoever. But
that's what you do. You go against the grain. So
I know, man. But just to, I've already got my famous person in my head. I'm just trying to think of my drink at the moment. Right. So controversially, the famous person I would love to have a drink with is Pablo Escobar.
Wow!
Oh, good one. Interesting guy. He's got charisma written out him, as you know.
It's just these sort of kingpins, these sort of drug dealers, like Al Capone. That's it. Pablo Escobar, El Chapo. These are guys that people have idolized. People still love them, and just to sit down and go, what was going through your mind at this, that, and next thing, and just to find out what was going on. And you know what, I probably would have a gin and tonic with them. Keep it old school, man. Keep it old school. But Pablo Escobar, just fascinating. I want to know if all the stories are true, if all the TV shows that are written about him are true.
Burning millions of dollars in the woods and
man. And what motivated him? Because I think if you're that successful, I'm sure if he put his mind to anything, whether it was selling cars, selling drugs, or selling property, or whatever it could have been, he would have been successful at that, whatever, because he just had it in his DNA. So I was just really curious about him. So that would definitely be my one.
That was a great
sitting
answer.
Down with Pablo Escobar, gin and tonic. don't know how he's going to feel about that, man. Like,
I know. That's probably a bit of a selfish one, to be honest.
It's your question, so he's got to know. He needs to do it, so that's cool.
Colombia, is it rum and coke, isn't it? Is that
must be something like that? I'll go with that.
Yeah, a bit exotic. I couldn't ask him for attendance, could I? I couldn't say, right,
nah, exactly, you're right. You're so right, man. You're right.
What about yourselves, guys? Who's the famous person you have to drink with? Or
Kenny's a good one.
I feel like I want to be famous. I want to have a famous person.
I'm going to change mine as well,
actually.
Okay.
Gav, you go first. You've had more chance. You go.
I would have whiskey with Matthew McConaughey. I fucking love him.
Easy days, eh? That was gutter, man. I'll talk about it earlier. What would you ask Matthew McConaughey, Gav? What would you ask him?
I wouldn't want to ask him specific questions. I just love to chat. I love his voice. His voice is just like, he's got a new book out called The Green Lights, and I looked it up last night, and he's got an audiobook version, and it's him speaking, and I was like, I need to get this. That will send me to sleep.
Have you got Audible, Gav? Have you got Audible already?
No, but I'm going to get it.
No, that I'm not a salesman for it, but when you sign up for it, you get one free audiobook.
Oh, there we go.
I was saying, Gavin's already torrented it. He's already.
I thought Kenny was going to say, if you sign up, I get £5 free.
Use code Kenny. Oh man, there's so many people I would like to just sit and just chill with, but like, just for being grown up and stuff like that, I think that Eminem would probably be like my pure favourite. Just for pure nostalgia, like, just that's who I pure love growing up and stuff. I pure love listening to Eminem, just to see, like, was it real? Like, did you really stay in a wee trailer park? Like, or was this a character that was created to sell to the world? Like, what would I have?
Just like motivated him, man, because he's completely changed from like being super outlandish to like being relatively reserved again. Yeah. And so, like, what was that calculated, or was that just you going, so that this is
enough's enough? Chill out, man. Just enjoy life. But his girl Hayley, she's doing really well for herself now. Like, she's a lot of work. But what would
What's your drink?
Oh, mate, I'm just having a pint, man. Just have Eminem.
Pint of what?
Pint of shite, man. Just whatever.
He's gone sober, so he might just like, I'll break it for you, Kenny. I'll break it for you.
So I love Brewdog. So me and Eminem will have a pint of Elvis juice then. Full pint.
Nice,
man.
Nice.
I love
it. But Sebastian, it's been an absolute pleasure, mate. You're a cracking talker. You're obviously good at what you do, and if anyone is looking for any sort of training or how they can improve themselves in that line, then yes, just head across to yourself. So we can find you on pretty much everything, the art of charisma.
Yeah, but you know what? I'll say this to anyone who's listening, like, whether you're interested in training or coaching, whatever, or even if you've just got a question about a social situation that you were in that you just need help with, ping me an email. It's artofcharisma@outlook.com. Anything weird and wonderful. I hope I don't get sent a load of nudes.
You so love that, wouldn't you?
But if you've just got a question about something social or about something whatever, ping it over to me. I'll answer it for you.
Brilliant.
Also, man, that's brilliant. Right, well, episode thingy my bobber, episode
36.
36. Easy, done and dusty, guys. See, that's how you're a so responsible adult here, man. Like, aye. Thanks very much for your time, Sebastian. Gav, pleasure as always.
And looking forward to
speak to you soon, man. Take care.
Definitely.
Bye-bye.
Brilliant. Thanks, guys. Catch you.